No whining. Only expert guests and seasoned opinions. Instruction that matters. At the controls, Vincent Finelli and Mark Wright.
And we're back with USA Prepares. I'm Mark Wright. I'm here with the original survival economist, Vincent Finelli, and we are speaking with the fabulous Bob Chapman today from the International Forecaster. Vincent, why don't you introduce our special guest today?
Sure, I'd love to. Class, Bob Chapman and we at usaprepares.com are friends. Bob's an economic forecaster, the best in the business. Bob Chapman has an extraordinary track record of being correct well over 90% of the time. And he's with us every Tuesday from 3 to 4 p.m. Central on KWTO. Class, for a free issue of Bob Chapman's 30-plus page newsletter with no obligation of any kind, go to usaprepares.com and email from the website, write Bob Chapman on the subject line, include your email address, and we will make sure that you receive your International Forecaster pronto. Bob, you and Mark and I, Vin Finelli, are all on live, usaprepares.com, KWTO, 560 AM. Class, we told you in the past that Bob Chapman writes this newsletter, and royalty, the White House, and international bankers all read it. Is that correct, Bob?
That's true.
Bob, those that run the economy of this country have given us a beating. How about we take our gloves off right now and expose them for what they're doing to us?
Well, you can start with the Federal Reserve. For almost 100 years after its enactment as a Federal Reserve Act, they have been running the country. And they've been looting it, running roughshod over it. And up until quite recently, most people didn't understand that they were a private corporation owned by what they call the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee, which is 12 Federal Reserve banks. And they do as they please. They elect who they please. They influence judges the way they please. They run the World Bank, the IMF, and they work in, the best word to use is collusion, with other central banks throughout the world, particularly those in Western Europe. And we're in the fix that we're in today, economically, particularly in Western Europe, England, and the United States, because, and they've done this many times in the past, because the Fed and others have decided that the only way that they can get people in particularly those countries that I mentioned to accept world government is to bring them to their knees financially and economically and force them, you and I, to accept world government. That's what this is all about.
Bob, they've been doing a fabulous job of beating us down, haven't they?
Well, they sure have, and they control all of the mainline media, and they have for many, many years. And that's why alternative radio, talk shows, the Internet have been so successful and becoming so powerful, not only in the United States but throughout the world. I do conferences and have for many years on radio and TV and in the press, and also physically in Dublin and London and Paris, BBC, Radio Freedom in Ireland, the international edition of France Overseas, Deutsche Welle in Germany, and also throughout many countries such as Greece. Last year and a quarter, I've spent a lot of time on radio and TV and in the press in Greece. And I think one of the reasons that they're doing what they're doing in Greece is because of what I had to say. And quite frankly, they're doing exactly what I told them to do. And it wasn't only myself, Max Kaiser and Alex Jones spent a lot of time doing that as well. And we have to expose these people for what they are. The international bankers create these situations like you see today in Greece, Ireland, Portugal, Spain, Italy, Belgium, just to name a few European countries that are in serious financial trouble, all because of what the bankers have been up to, making loans to people in countries that shouldn't have them. And it's their responsibility to be prudent in lending, and that they haven't been that. And so, as a result, in the case of Greece, they wanted to have the Greek government use their assets as collateral. And what are their assets? All their islands, seaports, airfields, airlines, transportation services, electric, water, gas, you name it, they want it for 30 cents on the dollar.
You know, Bob, I got a headline right here. It says, police clash with rioters as general strike turns violent in Greece. These people, do you believe they rightfully have a reason to be protesting about what the IMF and the UN is trying to do to their country?
They certainly do. And there's not much violence because the police and the military have come out and said, if the House of Representatives, and there's a Greek word for it, which I don't pronounce very well, so I won't try to, but their House of Representatives is supposed to be voting right now. I haven't seen any results on a proposal from the European Union, the banks involved that have large loans to Greece in the form of bonds, and also the IMF. And that involves the sale of Greek assets and collateralization, and I don't think they'll pass that, which means the group will have to go back to the drawing board and come up with Plan B without asking for collateralization. Now, if they don't do that, and the Greeks default, all those bonds that are held by the banks and the countries, sovereign countries, are going to be worthless. And the credit default swaps, which are written by New York banks, $130 billion, they will go into default as well, and the banks will have to pay off the banks in Europe that bought the credit default swap insurance from the U.S. banks. What are we talking about? Probably about $500 billion.
So, Bob, where would that come from?
The banks in the U.S. would have to pay the banks in Europe. The banks in Europe would lose about 60 to 70% of the money that they lent in the form of bonds that is not covered by that insurance. And the sovereign countries involved would lose everything they had. Now, there's 6 countries. What's the total bill? $4 to $6 trillion. We'll be conservative, say $4 trillion. And incidentally, I projected this over a year ago with the same numbers.
Yes, you did.
And so they don't have enough money to bail these countries out. They got to let them all go under. And they're fighting not to do that because that will destroy their dream of the European Union. The euro will go down the sewer, so to speak, and their dream of implementing world government will be thwarted at this time. And many of the things that these bankers and people within the governments of these countries, including the European Central Bank, have all broken the law, civilly as well as criminally, and so they're going to have to deal with that as well. The world is irate because they're finding out what's going on, because I'm telling them what's going on, and fortunately I have a long reach.
Bob, would you say that the United States is in a depression?
I declared an inflationary depression got underway 2 years ago, February. So we got 27 months of inflationary depression. Now, what is the next step? We're looking right now at inflation of 3.6% officially, over 10% in the real world. Where will it be by the end of the year? And I projected this over a year ago, 14%. That's a result of QE1 and Stimulus 1. Next year we get the result of QE2 and Stimulus 2. That's 25 to 30% inflation. If we have QE3, and we have to, maybe in another name, but we have to, what's that going to cost? Probably about $2.3 trillion that the Fed's going to have to come up with. They create that out of thin air. That'll give us 50% inflation. If they don't do it, the whole thing's just going to collapse. We won't have hyperinflation. We'll just go directly into a deflationary depression like we had in the 1930s.
So when that happens, Bob, what will the effect be on the common person, the guy that goes to work that may or may not have a job by then? What will he and his family see if we go into that?
Well, let me give you the real unemployment figures. The one they give you is U3. There's U1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's totaled on the U6. They're calling U6 at 16.3%. But if you eliminate the bogus birth-death ratio, the birth of businesses and the death of businesses, which they use as a subterfuge, real rates are 22.6%. In 1933, they were 37.4%. So that'll give you an idea where we're at. But in the 1930s, we didn't have extended unemployment or unemployment.
Sure.
We
didn't have stimulus packages or
stamps.
QE3 either. Bob, we're going to have to take a brief bottom-of-the-hour break here, and we'll come back right after the bottom-of-the-hour break. This is USA Prepares, the radio program. I'm Mark Wright. I'm here with the original survival economist, Vincent Finelli, and we'll be right back with Bob Chapman from the International.
Please return to your seats. Class is now in session at usaprepares.com. Interact now by emailing instructor@usaprepares.com or text 417-200-4715. And now, Vincent Finelli and Mark Wright.
And we're back on USA Prepares, the radio program. I'm Mark Wright. I'm here with Vincent Finelli. And Vincent, will you resume this interview with the great Bob Chapman?
Bob, it's so great to have you here. You know, the world, what you say in your international forecaster dated June 22nd of this year, what the world is experiencing today did not happen by chance. It was planned that way. I mean, you come out and say it in print publicly. So let's continue on with what's going to happen to the common person. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to Mark? What's going to happen to Arlen, our producer?
Well, we're striving towards that by pointing out that the world today is a bit different than the 1930s, which experienced deflationary depression. And today we have unemployment, extended unemployment, food stamps, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other government benefits, disability, and other things. They didn't have that in the 30s. So where are we going to get to with this unemployment? Probably back up to 35 to 40%, maybe even higher, because the conditions this time are much worse. During the 30s, the dollar was backed by gold. We didn't have hardly any foreign debt, and yet we did have a depression. The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 90%. The government doubled the price of gold after they attempted to confiscate it, which is very, very unsuccessful. They get about 25% of what they were looking for. And the answer to your question is what's going to happen to all of us in America and other places as well. And that is, we're going to see the same problems that we saw in the 30s, only worse.